It's time for another super exciting reading vlog here on the booktube channel Jack and the Book Stack. In February, I had a personal reading theme, and that was romantasy. I wanted to knock off a lot of the books that were on my physical TBR, on my Kindle Unlimited TBR, on my unfinished series TBR. So that was really my focus for February, but I'm getting a little bit burnt out. I am currently in progress of finishing the Plated Prisoner series. This is book 6, the last one in the series. I'm almost done. And I think when I finish that, I am going to treat myself to a little genre switch up, I guess. So I have been craving more literary fiction, more kind of like, it's not like I don't want fantasy, like magical realism I really love, but I'm craving more books like that, like more creative and different. And so I have a couple on my TBR that I think I'm going to read next. Now, the first book I'm going to pick up is technically still in the fantasy realm. On Goodreads, it's categorized as sci-fi, so still kind of in there, but it's also labeled as speculative fiction, which I did have to Google because I don't know the difference between like literary fiction, contemporary fiction, speculative fiction, but it seems like it's the same as magical realism, where it's in our current everyday world, but there is an element of like something different. So I'll tell you more about it, but the book is called Sky Full of Elephants by Cebo Campbell. And this is one that was nominated on the Goodreads Choice Awards, but it didn't stand out to me necessarily. It wasn't until I saw 2 reviews on Goodreads from booktubers that I love. There was Gabby Reads and Books and Lala. Both rated this 5 stars. And that carries a lot of weight. In Lala's Goodreads review, she said this was complex and simply transcendent, which okay, I'm intrigued, and she doesn't often give out a lot of 5 stars, so I really wanted to check that out. But it was really Gabby's review on Goodreads that made me want to pick this up. So it says, this was so good and so thought-provoking. What an interesting concept for a novel. What would a world look like without white people? I loved all the commentary in this book about race. I love that we follow a black man named Charles who was incarcerated before the old world, and now he's a professor. It takes place about a year after all the white people in the world are gone, and reading about the new world was absolutely fascinating. I also love that we follow his biracial daughter, who witnessed her entire white family die. Getting both of their POVs was so fascinating because they have very different perspectives on this new world, and the writing was just so well done. I felt so connected to these characters, and this was the perfect balance of sci-fi mixed with a contemporary literary feel to the writing. The ending was so powerful, I'll be thinking about this book for a very long time. So that is exactly what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something with substance, something profound, and I love like this different element that like the whole race is gone. And that in itself, there's going to be a lot of commentary, but just that's the sci-fi magical element of it. And I'm really looking forward to this. So I think this is going to be my first read as I'm taking a little cleanse from actual fantasy, like talking about, you know, different worlds and fae and mating bonds and dragons. That's what I mean, like a break from fantasy. So I got this audiobook from my library. It's not on Libby, they use a different app, this is a good reminder. If your public library is not on Libby, talk to them because maybe it's a different one. This one uses like Cloud Library or something like that. So I'm gonna listen to the audiobook and just do everyday life. I've got some cleaning, some gardening, some workouts, some dog walks, all sorts of fun, but I think this will be a good book to keep me company and hopefully will be very refreshing. In an unrelated bookish note, isn't this t-shirt just the funniest thing you've ever seen? This is so funny. I'm cracking up. I got this for Christmas and it was like one of my favorite gifts. Time to stock up on some homemade dog food, so I am going to continue listening to my audiobook while I do this very smelly work of feeding my pups. I have finished Sky Full of Elephants and I really liked it. The writing was beautiful and it really created this connection with these different characters and the complexities of those characters. I enjoyed that a lot, and nobody was like cut and dry. Everybody had so much dimension to them in what they've experienced, what they're feeling, who they are, and that was really great to explore. The plot was really creative, and how this world is different without white people was very fascinating. I enjoyed that creativity a lot. Something I really liked was how much kindness was in this world. And I liked people showing up for each other, taking care of each other, just how society was rebuilding, but I don't even know if rebuilding is the right word, just how they were existing. I really loved following along with. Something that lost me a little bit was one of the main characters and one of the POVs that we follow named Sydney. She is the daughter, she is the one that is biracial, and I was really excited to follow her journey and her complexities, dealing with seeing her whole family walk into the lake and die, like her whole white family disappear, and that was traumatic for her. And so she's dealing with the grief from that, but she's also really struggled with her identity up until this point, so her entire life. She's had difficulties being half black, and her father didn't have a presence in her life, and so she had this like abandonment issue. And I was looking forward to meeting her and learning more about her. However, I could not connect to her. I thought she was insufferable. She was very much one of those characters where it's like hurt people, and she just constantly lashed out, and she just had a horrible attitude. So it made me not connect to her, not care about her journey. I mean, I know that we're setting this up for her to transform and grow, but I didn't care. And I know that she's nasty and mean because she's grieving and she doesn't have a sense of belonging or identity. Logically, I get that, but reading it, I don't care about her. She is just being such a brat, so entitled, so arrogant. She keeps saying she wants things to go back to the way they were. She's kind of cruel a lot and just clueless about people's experiences. And I didn't enjoy her. So I had difficulty because when I want to connect to her and follow her transformation and her journey, really, I just wanted everyone to say, okay, well, if that's how you're gonna be, then go be miserable by yourself and go rot alone because you're just so unpleasant to be around. And that's how I felt through the whole book. Like, I never came around to enjoying her. So I think Sydney knocks my rating down a whole star because it stopped me from being truly moved by what this book was trying to tell me. However, I'm still at a 4-star rating because I enjoyed this. This was creative. Like I said, the writing was beautiful, the characters were complex, the message was great. Okay, it's not fair to pin it all on Sydney. I think Sydney and also this concept of the machine, I didn't like. And I'm not gonna spoil it for you and say more about that. I just didn't like that either. It just got too sci-fi for me. I would have liked it to be a little bit more ambiguous, I think, but I did not like the machine either. So we'll split the blame between Sydney and the machine. So finish that read. I feel accomplished. And I think I'm going to transition now to The Four Winds, which is a historical fiction by Kristen Hanna, who has been known to rip out my heart before. And I think I'm ready for that. It's been interesting because a few months ago I read Swan Song, and that is a post-apocalyptic story, and there's a lot of survival elements with that. And I'm still in the mood to read more survival stuff. I really like that. So reading about the Great Depression, I think will be an interesting take on survivalism, right? Like, people, crops not growing food, people not having money, have to get creative with ways to survive in that time frame. I'm looking forward to reading that because I think that will fit into the mood a little bit. So this is, I think this takes place in 1934, and this is in the time period of the Great Depression, the people that lived through it, the harsh realities that divided a nation, and the enduring battle between the haves and the have-nots. So I think this will be really interesting, and especially since like I want to work on my garden a little bit. And listen, that's my apocalyptic character trait, is I'm like, man, if the world's gonna end, if eggs are going up this much, then I'm just gonna grow my own food, okay? This is my way to cope with our own apocalyptic events. So I think reading this and messing around with my garden will be a lot of fun. So I have the audiobook so that I can continue working on stuff. Although I am in a mood to physically read, I'm gonna start with the audiobook so that I can still get some stuff done. I am trying this app and website called Seed Time for my gardening this year. So I input all the plants I want to have, and then it kind of pops it into the date and for the tasks that I need to do, depending on the area that I'm in. So today is February 17th. It is President's Day. I'm off from work. And it says that I should have already transplanted my spinach, and that I need to transplant my cilantro, and that I need to seed my pumpkins, which is really interesting because I thought pumpkins were like a fall kind of a thing, but this has me doing all of it in the spring. So anyways, that's what I should be doing right now, but let me show you my little seedlings. This is my very, very official indoor gardening setup. So these are my little seedlings and my little experiment here of different methods. These are onions, this is bell pepper, this is jalapeno. These are tomatoes, which are doing pretty good. Not to be confused with these tomatoes, which are looking a little bit sad. But this is the spinach that it says that I need to put in the ground right now. And they just look kind of fresh. I don't know if they're ready. And then I tried these pods for the spinach too, and like only one of 3 was successful. So I don't know if these things are the way to go. I think the tray is doing a little bit better. And then the basil and cilantro, which is nowhere near ready to be planted. And then basil on the left, cilantro on the right. And then I have these potatoes here because I'm trying to make them sprout so that I can put them in the ground. But I don't know if that's gonna happen, if I need to soak them in water, or maybe just since I got them from the grocery store, maybe they have like anti-sprouting stuff on them. I don't know, but this is kind of what's on the agenda for gardening, maybe. So here is my work in progress garden, and my garlic is doing pretty well. That has to hang out there for a long time, but I'm excited to finally harvest it. Bell peppers have seen better days. Swiss chard has been amazing, and I've had some really good salads with that. Kale is really the all-star of my winter garden, and I make salads all the time with this. So good. When I come over to this bed, my arugula looks like a weed. I think I need to learn a little bit about how to prune it and stuff, but I made one salad from this, but now it's just so overgrown. It looks like a weed. I'm scared to eat it. So.
Macmillan Audio presents The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. Read for you by Julia Whalen.
You guys, sometimes adulting is hard. Adulting when you need a paycheck is hard too, because it has been a stressful week with work. And I am in the mood to read. I want the distraction, but I'm so crabby that the characters are just getting on my last nerve. And that's no fun. So I'm still reading The Four Winds, and it's good. It's a good book, but I need to pivot a little bit right now and focus on something different. So I have two other fiction options for myself. Ironically, both center around a theme of depression, but don't worry, that's not what I'm dealing with right now. I'm just stressed. But it was kind of like an ironic thing. But I'm just in the mood for something like a little bit darker with substance and humor, if that makes sense. So the first book that I picked out was The Wedding People. And how I describe what I'm in the mood for, that's what I understand this book to have. It is about a woman who goes to a luxury resort, and she has made the decision to end things for herself. But while she's there, she runs into this bride who's there with all her friends and family to get married. And the bride says, please don't do that because it would absolutely ruin my wedding. It would take the attention away from me, and I just can't have that. Like, really caring, right? So that is what the story is about. The plot kind of gives me the expectations of A Man Called Ove by Frederick Bachman. And if this book can make me feel that way, that is a great mood for what I'm in. So this is one option. Again, you can see it has substance. It has like a dark topic, but supposedly it has some like quirky characters that add some levity to it. It's like dark humor. So that is one option. And then the other is a reread of Ripe, which is about the dark and grittiness of working in corporate America. And I thought the mood I'm in now, being stressed because of work, like this could be like an extra fun read because I definitely don't have it as bad as this character does. But the dark grittiness is something I'm in the mood for. Her frustrations are something I can relate to, not the situation, but just how she feels. My dog is barking like crazy. So those are the two options I have for mood reading, taking a break from The Four Winds. But one more grievance I have, like not bookish related, but I went to CVS to get a digital passport photo. I'm renewing my passport online because it expires in May, and you can do it online apparently now. So I need a digital photo. $23. $22.63. CVS, why? Why? It's a selfie that you email to me. Why does it need to be that expensive? It took the girl a little bit of time because she didn't know how to work the machine or like how to ring it up properly because I was like arguing the charges at first. But for her to take the picture and like run it through the machine was like 2 minutes tops. Like $22.63. I don't get it. I am floored. And the photo absolutely sucks. Like one of the worst photos I've ever taken in my life. Just like the lighting and the shadows, and I know you can't like strike a pose or like a supermodel or anything for these, but in my current passport photo, I was allowed to smile, and this one, like I couldn't smile, wouldn't let me smile, and so I just do not look good. So every time I look at it, I'm gonna be angry. But on the bright side, if I'm looking at my passport, I'm probably on my way to someplace fabulous. Like, how can you be mad when you're on vacation? So I'll get over that, but I am not getting over CVS and their $22.63. That's insane. Okay, anyways, now that I've given you guys my list of grievances, I'm gonna get back to the books and see if one of these can give me the distraction that I am looking for. All right, I have finished all the reads that I set out to read in this video, and I am feeling a lot better, a lot more positive and bubbly. So perfect time to do a reading wrap up and see how these non-fantasy books aligned with my mood. So first and foremost, I want to talk about my reread of Ripe. And wow, I told you guys this is a dark, gritty book that I was really excited to reread, and it was fantastic. I knew it was fantastic the first time I read it. I rated it like 4 stars because it's unsatisfying in some areas. It's very unsettling and unsatisfying, but it's supposed to be. And what I enjoyed more about my reread of this is there's so much tension in this book. The first time I read it, I was just so excited to see what would happen next to like resolve that tension. And knowing what happens, like keeping the end in mind, I could really just focus on the writing and enjoy that, which I really, really did. So there's a couple quotes that stood out to me that I wanted to read to you, and I'm hoping they will be like impactful to you guys. Like it's kind of hard without the context and like reading the whole book, but I told you roughly this is about a woman who's working at a tech startup company in Silicon Valley, and it is horrible. Like it does put things into perspective for you. Like no matter what frustrations you have at your job, as long as it's not this bad, maybe it's okay. So that probably helped in making me feel better. But there's this quote, it starts on page 99. "Isn't that always the way adult life begins? You think you'll become something different, something new. At first, you swim violently against the tide, your body straining until your muscles give out, until you can't push any harder, until you stop fighting and float, letting the water take you back to shore, where the rest of the world is already at the office, typing on their computers beneath buzzing fluorescent lights, toiling away in the glare of the permanent productive daylight." And it's like, gosh, this is so just like bleak, but I love it. I was just eating it up. Then on page 169, "You wake up one day and realize what you've become, what you allow, and you have to stare down into the pit at yourself, at your own choices, at the ways in which you have been cunning and stupid and false and wretched to keep up with the world around you. How does anyone bear themselves? How can anyone stare into the darkest corners of humanity and return to the office, enter the meeting room, and deliver the presentation? How do we all just keep working?" I love it. I mean, if you know, you know. This is a great read. I definitely recommend it, but only if you can handle a very dark story involving depression. You gotta be in a good, like, mental headspace, I think. Like, that's one warning for this book because it is highly about loneliness and depression. Another book that's about loneliness and depression was The Wedding People. But this one, interestingly enough, takes a more upbeat spin. I told you what it was about, a woman going to a resort to end things and the wedding that she is disrupting. So I was expecting Man Called Ove vibes for this, and unfortunately my expectations were not met. Maybe I set the bar too high, but I was expecting more vibrant, charming characters that I loved, and like I loved their connection with the main character. Like that's what I was expecting, and this was a book of almosts for me. It was almost there. I almost had those vibrant characters I wanted, but they still kind of fell flat for me. Like primarily the bride was so selfish and so unlikable. I mean, even from the description, you kind of know that, right? Like she's making it all about me. Like, don't you make that decision the week of my wedding because you'll ruin my wedding. Like you can kind of get she's selfish, but she is like really, really bad with that. For example, she knows what the main character was set out to do, but she never once asks her what was behind that decision or what's going on in her life. Like she has no idea anything about this woman. She just talks about her own problems, her own wedding, her own dynamics with the families. Like she doesn't ask this woman anything about herself. It's just really, really strange. As far as the writing, there was a lot of commentary on loneliness and depression and hopelessness, and that was beautiful at times. Like it would catch my attention, and right when I would want to highlight or underline something, the writing would like veer off into something different that like I lost the impact. So that's what I mean. Another thing that was like almost. The writing was almost impactful. There were almost quotes that I really loved in this book. I also had big expectations for a pivotal moment with the main character to connect with herself or connect with her purpose in life that gives her a rejuvenated sense of life, something like that. And it just wasn't a powerful thing. It just seemed like, well, it's now less convenient for me to follow through with those plans, so I'll just see what happens. Like, it wasn't as moving as I expected. So again, this was just lots of almosts. And I liked it, but I think I land at like a 3.5 rating because it just, maybe I had the wrong expectations for it. I was expecting it to be so much more impactful than it was, but it was just like mildly entertaining. I did finish it quickly. I was engaged. I wanted to see what happened next, but just missed the mark a little bit in terms of like the substance and the impact I was looking for. But, you know, still an interesting read if you're looking for that. And then finally, I finished The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. This one did take me a long time to read because it did not make me feel good. Like, I feel like crap after reading this. And when I was already like kind of in a bad mood, this was not a good distraction read. It's not meant to be. It's not meant to be entertaining. It's compelling. You want to know what happens. You're connected to the characters, but like, it's not entertaining. It's not meant to be. So this one is about the Great Depression. We have this young woman who goes to move on a farm and she has 2 kids with her husband. They are in Texas and they have some tough times with the Dust Bowl. There's dust storms coming in. There's no rain. It's hot. Crops aren't growing. So they're kind of grappling with a decision with, should we move west to California? Should we look for opportunities? This historical fiction is great because I learned a lot about the Great Depression that, I mean, I knew what it is, but like when you're in it, it's just a different level of understanding, right? So I learned a lot about this event in history, and it is entertaining. That's not the right word. You connect with the characters. You care what's going to happen next. You're invested in their story. And so adding this story makes you learn about a point in time without it reading like a history textbook, right? Much more engaging that way. And I really did connect with these characters. Kristen Hanna does a great job. This did remind me a lot of The Nightingale because we have 2 female characters. One is very conservative, believes in following the rules. The other one is like fiery and gung-ho and wants to join the revolution. Like, very similar dynamics with the characters. So I would dock my rating a little bit for that because it seemed a little bit formulaic for Kristen Hanna. But on the other hand, I am shaken up with how relevant this is today. Not in terms of the setting of the Great Depression, but just certain themes like the haves versus the have-nots, how people treat each other, how fear manifests itself into anger towards other people. Like, we blame other people as the problem. And there's just a lack of empathy and compassion for humankind. And it's all based in fear. And oh my gosh, capitalism, huge. So what was a struggle for me reading this was just, those are the things that didn't make me feel good. Just made me feel icky because it's so relevant today. Like, I kept reading this and drawing parallels to the current environment, and it just made me feel very powerless, very confused, and yeah, just powerless. Like, that's how this made me feel. But it did its job. It's not meant to be an upbeat book. It's just meant to connect you to other people, have empathy, and I think what is it? What is the quote? Those that don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. This is really good at giving you that insight. This is something I would say should be required reading in schools. Like, it's an important book. It's an important story. And it makes you want to keep reading to see what happens to the characters. So by that regards, it's a good book. I rate it 4.5 because I think everyone should read it. I feel refreshed after reading some non-fantasy books. I really love general fiction. I want to get some more recommendations, so please drop a comment down below with some of your favorites that I can check out. But because I'm refreshed, I think I'm ready to get back to it, so I might pick up a fantasy book next. It's all about mixing up the genres and going with the mood, which I'm always happy to do. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in this video. I'll see you next time.